All right, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Our goal here is to review the market generated information in a holistic fashion. We are intimately following the auctions narrative of both ES and NQ. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. We did speculate in the market today. Please see our uploaded recording. It contains some of my real time analysis. We use this as an archive for our professional development. All right, let's get started. So we'll start off with our typical questions with the narrative. Where's the market coming from regarding the overall narrative and the price, and what is price trying to accomplish today? So to understand where we are headed, we need a little more context. Again, it's going to be the same situation as we've been talking about, the same 2 week balance range. I know that's not the straightest line, but we're breaking through and we're starting to accept prices higher. Eventually, the more we build volume here, it's a possibility that we may break out for sure, because shorts are getting grinded on, and yeah, buyers not letting them out. Even though this candle ended red, we created a higher high and a higher low. So you can't be fooled by this. This, by all means, is still one time framing. We are seeing the same from the NQ, who has a little bit of relative strength. We've been following the sectors for a while for the S&P 500, and we know that the healthcare and the finance sectors are kind of taking a break. So we're really seeing discretionary, and technology kind of lead the way, and we're seeing that through these daily candles. So again, buyers really want to just make a higher high and a higher low, just continue one time framing, and it looks like they got that exactly. So before we do the footprint, we'll look and see what we had on the docket. Not too much here from the earnings standpoint. We did have the Micron earnings, which I believe they ended up positive. It said like it was up 11%. Um, so, we'll look at that after hours trade and see how that went. And then for the data, we just had the new home sales. Tomorrow we do have the initial jobless claims as always, and then the durable goods and the GDP. A little bit of the pending home sales at 7 a.m. And then a plethora of Fed speakers, including Jay Powell with a little quick showing that's going to be uh, tomorrow. And again, these are going to be kind of scattered. So we got from 6 a.m. All the way until 10 o'clock that they'll be speaking, and actually past 10 o'clock. And then you can't forget that we have PCE on Friday. All right, we won't look at the sector trackers yet. So again, buyers wanted to really just continue on time framing and not break that. Anything else, it's really whatever. They essentially just want to grind, as this is a bull market near all-time highs, and the NQ is starting to wake up, which will be the sleeping giant, if you will. So we'll look at the one that performed a little worse first, which is going to be S&P 500. Again, we did in red. You can see our sellers in here and here. This looks like a multi-distributed. No specific pattern for this for the volume profile. Just jagged across. Yeah, just multi-distributed with the VPOC near the lows. You can see the volume was the lowest that we've seen, not including, I think this may have been a holiday or maybe the beginning of rollover. I'm not sure. I think it's the first week of the start of the rollover. But the lowest volume we've seen in a very long time on the futures, that is, with a lot of sellers stepping in. So for the fact that this was negative 16, basically negative 17K, and we ended at negative 13, we have a lot of possibly off balance sellers as the overnight is starting, and we're already starting to push up. And again, some of this is from the Micron earnings. So really not too much to look at there. Looking at the stronger participant who ended up a little above Doji. I'm seeing a situation with the sellers with light volume, some of the lightest volume that we've seen in a while. Sellers were sticking out, and they finished negative at negative 2,700 as well. And they are underwater so far, especially with the Micron earnings. They're already pushing above the prior day's high. But again, we won't look at the overnight session. So again, solid so far from what we can see. Looking at, oh, my apologies. Looking at the sector tracker, we can see it's the negative 20 basis points. Again, with the primary being energy, but they're not weighted, too high. So we're not going to worry too much about that. But we do want to keep an eye on look at the 5-day, the XLF and the XLV. And even really the consumer staples. So we're not really taking a defensive stance right now. We're just kind of selling this just a little bit for those three sectors. Really, the only positives being utilities, who's been breaking out just in general, and then you have the technology, which this looks like it was like Microsoft that basically ended up breaking even, and this was pretty much a day for the chips and Microsoft. That was Apple that ended up negative actually. So really not too much to show there. Again, with discretionary, we'll see. Take a quick look at this. We can see that Amazon was the one that was negative, Tesla was the one that was positive, and then just a little hit and miss for the rest. Yeah, really not too much to show there. Pretty much unchanged day for the most part. Technology did a solid job. All right, so we'll look at the market profile. Again, we'll start with the weaker of the two. So we have our Tuesday will merge with Monday. So we have our week distribution. Again, it's really not too much to say here. Oh no, I accidentally moved that. So we did break our all-time high for today just by a few points. We'll look at that on the 3-minute. But for the most part, I mean, we just have balance here. The VPOC is sitting here at the, what is this, 57.80 or so? Yeah, 57.77. So we shot above, and then we ended up just finding balance, returning and closing at the week VPOC, which is at those 77. So let's just call it 80. So again, really not too much to go here. A little down, a little up, a little down, a little up, which is more of what we've been seeing. So this is nothing special. Really not too much to say there. So again, just a multi-distributed day. Very much of a square shape, not a square shape, but just a normal profile. Just a lot of volume there. It's kind of turned into a P for the most part. The few opportunities that we've had to go lower at the FOMC high. There's been no kind of continuation. So we're just accepting prices higher, which is well above the composite and the monthly value area high. So again, if you can just take a look at that composite that goes back since April, we have our monthly composite and then our weekly composite. We're accepting prices higher. It's really not too much to say there. So those not a strong day by any means. It was we're still continuing the one-time framing, and that FOMC zone is considered cheap. So same situation here. We have our Monday, Tuesday, and then we have our Wednesday, weekly, monthly, composite. So again, the NQ was able to open at the lower end of this range, and we tested the weekly VPOC, and we found our way to the top of the range, went back to the bottom of the range, and then looks like we kind of closed in the middle. We had our Micron earnings, and then now we're pushing above that range. So again, this is what we were talking about the other day. If the NQ can look above, find support, and then build volume higher, they may not be at their all-time highs, but them to be able to control this 20,300 zone will be extremely pivotal for them. They can use that as support. So again, not too much to show there. We'll go ahead and merge those two. Again, you can see the VPOC is near these lows. So though the most volume is traded at these lows, we're finding our way higher here. So we may have some potential shorts that are stuck. For the relatively recent data, no singles or anything to speak of. Again, it's fairly simple day. So we'll go ahead and look at here on the intraday. Look at that same, the weaker performer. Pure slant down on our 65 minutes, not too much to say. Lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. Lots of delta, but not really too much progress. 11 and 12 points for all this delta. Even though this was like lower volume, sellers are really exerting a lot of force today, and we barely got below this. Hold on, we can actually just check right here, so we're not guessing. Okay, so they got under the 60, the 62, and closed above the 50 from yesterday's, from the weekly low so far. So again, not the sexiest showing from the ES, but they did a decent job. We've seen this kind of price action here from a lot of technologies, just kind of looking in real time, where you'll just have a big arrow bar and then you just chop in the middle of this. But do remember, we're already pushing above in the overnight session. But again, we're not talking about the overnight. So again, lower highs and lower lows to a degree, but they really just stayed range bound within this big impulsive candle. It's really not too much to show there for there. And then you'll look at this, the same price action on the 138 minute candles. You can see where we are here. We're able to push above. 1 second. All right, sorry about that. All right, so again, I mean, this is everything that we just looked at here. So we are starting to, I can never get, there we go. So this is we're starting to inch above here. So we really have clear skies here. We're really just looking at past structure. Again, I don't even have that loaded on my chart, so that's the progress that they're making, and we're seeing that same thing here for the ES. Though it's on different terms because they're above the all-time highs, and that's fine. But we do want to say good job to the NQ for them starting to catch up, especially if the ES can kind of take a break. It'd be nice if the NQ can really push us above, because again, we go as tech goes. All right. All right, sorry about that, a little tech issue. So essentially, so we covered over everything for the intraday. We'll go ahead and finish this up here, looking at the SOCs. Good Lord. Did I close that? No, I didn't close it. 1 second. Okay. All right, so looking at the weaker of the two, or the one who didn't perform as the best regarding the bull case. So again, we opened up here above the. Actually, we're right near the highs, so we wouldn't call that above. But again, we were very close. Once we started the session here, there was an immediate push to the all-time highs, but we didn't make it. Came down, tested open, we tried one much more, and then we ended up making lower highs and lower lows for the remainder of the for the remainder of the session. So really not too much to show there, and we did close below the DGPs and below the open of the prior day. So again, say what you will about that. A little more context. We're not going to go over the whole session, but essentially we were able to look above the prior day's high in the overnight session, and then found support at the initial balance high, but it didn't last long. Tried to go to the middle, that didn't last too long, but they were able to defend the prior IB low. We ended up finding a new leg, finding support above the prior IB mid, prior IB low, and then that's where we had that action for the RTH session. So big impulse, but there was just no real urgency to get there. There's definitely a lot of passive sellers, but it wasn't anything too much. But again, you can look at the DOM replay for a little more insight, because again, this kind of action is important. Once we went up here, it was really brief sweep that pushed us above, rejected, and we just really couldn't get back up. Once we got back to the initial balance mid, it was really much all she wrote. There was no strong follow through. This whole ride down was extremely two-way, two-sided. So Bulls ended up putting up a fight, the entire time. Anytime we tried to touch the VWAP, we ended up being rejected. So that was definitely some signs there. We stayed, once we hit the all-time high, and then we closed under the 5 smoothing average. we could not stay above at all. The first full body candle that we had that was above it was engulfed, and that was basically a sign there. This was incredibly annoying to play from the breakout standpoint because anytime we would wick below, we will find our way back up. This is just more of a slow grind kind of day. You need to have a little bit of a wider stop or just better positioning up here with extreme patience. So essentially just a bear flag day. Again, we're not going to look at the overnight. This is just, we're just using this context, but we essentially just bear flagged for the remainder of the day, unfortunately, for the buyer. So again, not the best showing from them for the S&P 500. We'll look at potential trades of the day, but a little more context of the NQ who performed a little better. They didn't have the best positioning relative to the prior day. Still above the prior days, actually. No, so yeah, they were below the prior IB high. But the open happened. They ended up pushing up 2 bars up, 2 bars down. Motherfucking 30 bars up, basically. As the ES was pushing their new highs, they continue to stay up. So I mean, you can really see their strength here in this B bracket, and it took them forever to get back to their IB mid. It took a little over 2.5 hours. And once we were under it, we had our first test of the IB low, and we basically had like a tick reversal. We looked below and immediately scurried back up, though it was not anything for the excuse me, it wasn't anything extremely aggressive to get us back to that midpoint. But just no one wants to trade at these lows. Even if we do find our way, we ended up reversing and engulfing that relatively quickly. We find our way back to retest this zone, make sure it's valid, and it is. And it stays supported for the remainder of the day, clearly into the overnight session. Here's that Micron earning. That's what it seems like at 1 o'clock. So again, really not too much here. Once they ended up pushing fairly strong, they ended up getting below this 5 smoothing average here. And again, same situation, not really able to stay above. Full body candle ended up being reversed. Full body and candle ended up being reversed. And then same situation there, just kind of bear flagging for the remainder of the day, but really more of just two-way trading. Again, once you have the two-way trading, again, you had the big, in this case we did this a little backwards, but we had our big leg up, and then once we hit that 5 smoothing that, and then once we hit that 5 smoothing average here, once we hit our 5 smoothing average here, we ended up just really just sitting sideways for the remainder of the day, a little down, a little up. Not paying attention to the overnight. So again, much more resilient for the NQ, especially given their starting position. It was really solid for them to kind of step in and kind of take the range. You can see even in our overnight session, they were not able to trade above their high. They broke their prior IB low. So you would think like, damn, these guys would be weaker. But you really need to trade the here and now rather. I wouldn't call this like uber strength, but this is definitely relative strength and sturdiness. All right, give me one moment. I'm going to look for possible trades. Just to make sure that we have some. Actually, it's not anything we need to take a break for. So this, I'm not looking at this in real time. You know what I mean? I'm going to be away doing something else. So these are kind of off limits. I wouldn't want to trade them to the short side. We did ended up taking this in real time. Put this on a 1 minute. We took this breakout in this A bracket, completely botched it. But you can see, us having this big impulse. Actually, let me do it this way. And then we have our VWAP. All right, so we ended up having our leg lower, and then our leg higher, then our leg lower. Clearly, we didn't make a new low, and we did not even test the RTH VWAP or the open, and immediately came back up. The fact that this was not a new high, I'm sure it kind of got people excited to possibly look short. But the fact that we were able to hold this 5 smoothing average and this VWAP and the IB mid, excuse me, it wasn't IB mid at this point, but the 5 smoothing average and the RTH VWAP. That's what had me interested in this breakout here. So I had our stop. I ended up being, I manually liquidated here. And then I put one more breakout here right above that same high. So as it broke through, we ended up being carried for a little bit. And then I exited like a little bitch right here, not following my process. And then it just pretty much continued until we started having those closes below the 5 smoothing average on a 1 minute. You can see here possibly some little hope there, but the fact that this was reversed again, this was definitely a clear sign for you to GTFO. So again, definitely breakout trade there. Not too much on the short side, especially here for the ES. I mean, excuse me, for the NQ shorting. But definitely that long was really the breakout. Is really the only one that made sense for me um, in real time, and even in hindsight. Now for the ES, so the ES is a little different, especially with this being weak. All-time highs, that shouldn't be the kind of response you get. So when you see all-time highs, that should bring in activity. That should have people like, oh, okay, the market made all-time highs. That shouldn't stop people from wanting to buy. So I mean, this was already a red flag. This hold and then this engulfment to the open, and then the attempts to get back into the range and rejecting the RTH. In hindsight, that seems pretty easy, but you can see the multiple touches that we had. And once we got back above open, we failed. So, I mean, this was, this made sense. You could have got in short here with a small stop back really above these pivots here, which will only be like 5 points at most. If you were sloppy and got in here, let's call it, you got sloppy and got in at the 89, you can average stop here for 5 points at the 94s, targeting 10 points from the 89s. I mean, that'd be 79. So that may be a bit arbitrary because that's territory unknown. But that's when you would look back in the overnight session and kind of target some of these levels here. So again, in real time, you really want to be too interested in shorting this in real time. But DS was a bit weaker, and again, especially with the context that we've been seeing with the healthcare and the financial sector. It just made sense. But again, I didn't do this too well in real time. Excuse me. All right. And then just looking at this on the 1 minute, again, we'll bring out that anchor VWAP once more. Here are these touches for those VWAPs. So again, once they started closing between the 5 smoothing average, you see this open test, and you would think, hey, this may be the possibility. We're making a new higher low. We may be able to find some continuation, but anytime we ran up to this VWAP, we really started getting smacked. Okay, cool. So almost a new low, but defended back to that same RTH VWAP, and then engulfed again. So I mean, really, you would just want to wait until we have another opportunity to touch that VWAP. So again, in hindsight, this does make sense, and it's something that we need to be on the lookout for. But you will want to trade what you see and not what you think. But lots of multiple attempts to add or get in a little late. Here may make the most sense with a small stop if you can get in here. Again, let's say you can get in like around these 90s. Something that would be like a 3-point stop. At least targeting really some continuation after this low. But again, just in real time, there's some very pesky buyers. No real liquidation breaks. So those really be the trade of the days. Really the RTH VWAP rejections, the multiples, and then the open rejections. After we had some information here that the all-time highs candles were starting to get engulfed, and then we were making new lows. So you have context all in here, and then you have multiple chances for us to get in. All right, and that's essentially it. So again, how well did the market do? So the Nasdaq did a solid job of holding things down while the S&P 500 needed to take a break. The S&P 500, they did okay. They definitely did okay. It's not as bad as it looked, especially when we're still inside of yesterday's range. I'm doing my best to not look at the overnight session. So, just kind of looking at it From this standpoint, you really can't say they did too well. Um, but yeah, I mean, they didn't make a new low, so what else can you really ask for? So again, I mean, I'll pretty much leave it there. It's really not too much else to say. We do have some GDP data that's coming out tomorrow, and then the PCE that's on Friday. So things may change up a little bit, but as of right now, we're still clawing our way through the all-time highs. I'm curious if the S&P 500 is going to break above again, but let's go ahead and scoop this up because we have a new all-time high. And then let's see if we can make a new run. All right, you guys have a good night. We're going to go ahead and cut it there. I don't think there's anything else we need to add. Yeah. All right. See you tomorrow.